There are moments in the history of this venerable sport when the tectonic plates shift quietly beneath our feet, and there are moments when they crack the earth wide open for all to see. We are standing, right now, in the debris of the ladder, when Jamie Baker, the tournament director of these historic championships, stood before the press and confirmed that tickets for the matches of a 19-year-old from Quezon City had evaporated. Not just sold, but vanished into the ether with a ferocity usually reserved for farewell tours of absolute legends. A profound realization settled over the grounds of the All England Club. We are no longer waiting for the future of Asian tennis. It has arrived, and it has broken the turnstiles. To understand the gravity of what is happening with Alexandra Eala, one must look back to 1997, when a young Martina Hingis swept through the draw, carrying the weight of prodigy status with an eerie, smiling calm. Or perhaps, more accurately, we must look to 2011, when Li Na conquered Paris and forced an entire continent, 1 billion people strong, to suddenly care deeply about the geometry of a rectangle of clay. But even then, the infrastructure of anticipation was built slowly. What we are witnessing here on the grass of SW19 is a spontaneous combustion of national pride and genuine, undeniable tennis pedigree colliding at exactly the right hour. To hear a tournament director admit shock is a rare thing. The men and women who run the Grand Slams are accustomed to the extraordinary. They deal in the currency of superstars. They expect the center court ballots to be oversubscribed when a Djokovic or a Federer or a Williams graces the grass. They do not expect the sheer, unbridled demographic force that is mobilized behind Alexandra Eala. This is not simply a story of a nation supporting its own. That happens every year, in every corner of the globe. This is a story of a nation recognizing that its own is suddenly, thrillingly, capable of lifting the Venus Rosewater dish. The ticketing phenomenon Baker highlighted is the physical manifestation of belief. For decades, the Philippines has been a spectator to the highest echelons of this game, waiting for a champion to mold in its image. Now, they have a seeded player at Wimbledon, the 29th seed, to be precise. The first time a Filipino player has ever held that numerical shield at a major championship, and the diaspora has responded not with polite applause, but with a stampede. When you consider the hallowed, ivy-draped traditions of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club, there's always a slight tension between the old guard and the new wave. The establishment loves a polite narrative. What they are currently managing is a phenomenon. Every seat, every ground pass, every digital cue associated with Eala's projected path through the draw has been consumed. It reminds of the fervor that accompanied Goran Ivanishevich's wild card run in 2001, when the hill outside Court 1 transformed into a roaring slice of the Adriatic. But Goran was a known entity, a tragic hero on his final crusade. Eala is the dawn. She is the blank page, rapidly filling with victories over the modern titans of the sport. The fact that the WTA itself was reportedly caught off guard by the sheer velocity of this ticket demand speaks volumes about the insular nature of tennis evaluation. We track the rankings, we monitor the spin rates, we analyze the breakpoint conversion percentages. But sometimes we forget to measure the heartbeat of the crowd. Jamie Baker's announcement was not just a logistical update. It was a formal acknowledgement that the gravitational center of the championships has momentarily shifted. The weight of expectation is no longer solely on the shoulders of the defending champion or the world number one. A significant portion of it now rests on the shoulders of a left-hander who, just a few short years ago, was learning how to slide on clay at the Rafa Nadal Academy. This is the alchemy of sport. You mix raw talent with national longing, add a surface that rewards aggressive, front-foot tennis, and suddenly you have a spectacle that transcends a baseline. The lawns of Wimbledon have always been a theater of dreams, but they are also a notoriously unforgiving proving ground. The grass exposes technical flaws mercilessly. It demands a low center of gravity, a willingness to bend the knees, and a mind that can process chaos in fractions of a second. Eala has demonstrated all of this, winning titles in Birmingham and dismantling top 10 opposition in Berlin. She has earned this stage. But earning the stage and surviving the spotlight are two entirely different disciplines. The tickets are gone. The world is watching. The shockwaves from Jamie Baker's microphone have dissipated, and now, the only sound that matters is a crisp, echoing thud of a tennis ball striking the sweet spot of a racket. Let us dissect the anatomy of this surge, because a 29th seeding at Wimbledon does not materialize from thin air, nor does it rely solely on the fervent support of a passionate fan base. The numbers, the hard, unyielding statistics of the 2026 grass court season tell a story of a player who has unlocked the secrets of the most complex surface in tennis. Consider her trajectory. 2 years ago, she was a qualifier, finding her feet, learning the harsh realities of the main tour. Just last year, in 2025, she made her main draw debut here at the All England Club, drawing the defending champion, Barbara Krejcikova, in the first round. She took the first set. She struck the ball with a fearless, fluid power that momentarily stunned the Czech veteran, before the tactical nuance of a seasoned Grand Slam winner eventually prevailed. But that first set was a prologue. It was a declaration of intent. Now, look at the architecture of her current campaign. A title in Birmingham, navigating the tricky, slick conditions that often define the early British summer. Then, the true revelation, Berlin. The German capital has become a premier testing ground for Wimbledon contenders, and the draw is invariably a murderer's row of WTA elite. In the round of 16, Eala found herself across the net from Elena Rybakina, the world number 2 and a former Wimbledon champion. Rybakina is the archetypal modern power player, armed with a serve that functions as a heavy artillery strike and flat, penetrating ground strokes that devour time. Against such a force, conventional wisdom suggests a player of Eala's relative youth must play defensively, hoping for errors. Instead, the Filipina engaged in a blistering baseline duel. She did not retreat. She stood on the baseline, using her left-handed forehand to hook the ball cross-court, continually pulling Rybakina wide to the forehand side, exposing the slightly slower movement of the taller woman. The 7-5, 6-4 victory was a tactical masterpiece. It was reminiscent of the way a young Rafael Nadal would systematically dismantle the timing of pure ball strikers on fast courts. And she did not stop there. The subsequent quarterfinal victory over Alina Svitolina, a veteran who has reached the semifinals here in London, proved that the Rybakina win was not a singular, adrenaline-fueled fluke. Svitolina demands consistency. She forces you to hit 5, 6, 7 high-quality shots to win a single rally. Eala demonstrated the patience to construct points, utilizing her backhand slice to keep the ball skidding low on the turf, forcing the Ukrainian to hit upwards and generating the short ball she needed to attack. The semi-final loss to Linda Noskova barely registered as a setback. By then, the damage to the established order was done. The points were accumulated. The top 30 ranking was secured. The seeding was guaranteed. What does the 29th seed actually mean in the cold, brutal mathematics of a Grand Slam draw? It is a shield. It guarantees that Eala will not face another seeded player until the third round. It prevents a repeat of the Krejcikova scenario from 2025. It buys her time. On grass, perhaps more than any other surface, the first few days are about survival. The courts are lush, slippery, and unpredictable. The bounces are lower. By the second week, the baselines will be chewed into brown dirt, playing much more like a hard court. The seeding allows Eala the opportunity to find her rhythm against nominally lower-ranked opposition, while the courts are at their most dangerous. If she can navigate those opening hurdles, she will likely find herself in the third round against a top 8 player. That is where the tournament truly begins. That is where the ticket holders who crash the Wimbledon servers will expect to see fireworks. Tactically, Eala's left-handedness is a massive, quantifiable advantage on this surface. Think of Martina Navratilova, of Petra Kvitova, of John McEnroe. The slider out wide in the ad court, pulling the right-handed opponent into the tram lines, opens up the entire court for a simple put-away. Eala's serve has evolved significantly over the past 18 months. It is not the fastest on tour. She is not consistently cracking the 115-mile-per-hour mark like a Sabalenka, but the placement and the disguise are exquisite. She uses the slice serve effectively, keeping it low, refusing to give her opponents the waist-high contact point they crave. When you combine that with a forehand that generates heavy topspin, kicking up uncomfortably, you have a recipe for grass court success. The ball grips the turf differently when struck with that much rotation, often checking slightly before skidding through. Psychologically, we must also consider the environment she has emerged from. The The Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca is not a finishing school for polite tennis players. It is a crucible. They teach suffering. They teach the value of the final point of a 3-hour practice session. Eala possesses a visible resilience, a quiet intensity that masks a fierce competitive fire. She rarely gives away cheap points through emotional volatility. In Berlin, when Svitolina broke back in the second set, Eala simply stared at her strings, walked the towel, and broke Svitolina to love in the very next game. That is a learned behavior. That is the mentality of someone who has been repeatedly told that the match is never over until the umpire calls the score. The broader WTA landscape is currently in a state of fascinating flux. Iga Swiatek remains the undisputed queen of clay, a historic force at Roland Garros. Aryna Sabalenka brings a raw, terrifying power to the hard courts. Coco Gauff has realized her Grand Slam potential and possesses the best defensive skills in the women's game. Rybakina is a silent assassin on fast surfaces. But beneath that established top tier, there is a churning, chaotic battle for supremacy. Emma Raducanu is finding her footing again, unseated but incredibly dangerous in her home conditions. Barbara Krejcikova, Marketa Vondrousova. The Czechs always loom large on grass. Into this volatile mix steps Alexandra Eala, armed with a seeding and the momentum of a runaway train. The established stars will be watching her results closely. Nobody in the top 8 wants to see the 29th seed next to their name in the third-round bracket. She has transitioned from a promising junior, from an intriguing prospect, into a genuine, verified threat. Furthermore, the coaching dynamic surrounding her has clearly stabilized. There's a clarity to her patterns of play. When she is under pressure, she does not panic and hit aimlessly. She reverts to a trusted sequence. Wide serve, cross-court backhand, step inside the baseline. It sounds simple, but executing that sequence with thousands of people screaming, with the weight of national history on your shoulders, requires a phenomenal level of automated muscle memory. The team around her deserves immense credit for constructing a game plan that maximizes her physical attributes while mitigating the inherent risks of aggressive tennis. The ticket frenzy that Jamie Baker described is not merely an anecdote. It is a tactical factor. Tennis is an intimate sport. The spectators are physically close to the players. When a crowd is heavily skewed toward one competitor, it can create a suffocating atmosphere for the opponent. We have seen seasoned professionals unravel completely when faced with a partisan crowd on an outside court at Wimbledon. If Eala is scheduled on Court 2 or Court 3, the notorious graveyard of champions, the density of support will be overwhelming. It will sound like a Davis Cup tie in Manila rather than a Tuesday afternoon in London. Eala must harness that energy without being consumed by it. She must draw from a noise without feeling obligated to hit spectacular winners to please the crowd. Discipline will be her greatest weapon. When we look at the physical toll of her recent run, there are questions. The transition from clay to grass is the most jarring adjustment in professional tennis. The muscles required for lunging and staying low are entirely different from those used for sliding on crushed brick. Eala has played a lot of matches in the last month. The victory in Birmingham, the deep run in Berlin, these require physical tacks. Wimbledon is a marathon, not a sprint. The rest days between matches are crucial, but the cumulative fatigue of a breakthrough season can suddenly manifest in the second week of a major. Her physical conditioning, her recovery protocols, the ice baths, the physio sessions, these unseen elements will determine whether she can sustain her level if she reaches the second Monday. Yet, perhaps the most compelling aspect of this narrative is the utter lack of precedent. There is no blueprint for a Filipina player navigating this level of global attention and athletic expectation. She is writing the manual in real time. For decades, the narrative of Asian tennis was dominated by the Japanese, the Chinese, and the occasional tie breakthrough. The Philippines has a rich sporting history. Deeply tied to basketball and boxing, sports of tight spaces and immediate, visceral contact. Tennis is a sport of distances, of solitary problem-solving across a vast expanse of geometry. Eala has brought this sport into the living rooms of millions who previously only paid attention during the second week of the slam. She has made the intricacies of a sliced backhand approach shot relevant to an entire nation. This brings us back to the All England Club, to the immaculate lawns and the echoing corridors. The draws have been made. The pathways are clear. The top seeds are looking over their shoulders, and the tournament director is answering questions about crowd control. The sport thrives on these infusions of new energy. It relies on the unpredictable rise of a new star to keep the narrative fresh. The anatomy of Alexandra Eala's rise is built on solid, undeniable tennis fundamentals: a heavy forehand, a deceptive serve, a brilliant tactical mind, and an iron will forge in the fires of elite academies. The tickets are sold because the public recognizes authenticity. They know the difference between hype and substance. When Eala beat Rybakina, it was not a lucky bounce or an opponent's off day. It was a systematic dismantling. That is what fills the stands. That is what causes a tournament director to stand before the world and express absolute astonishment. When we strip away the noise, the sold-out stadiums, the breathless press conferences, the frantic shifting of the rankings, what are we left with? We are left with the long view. The horizon of this sport stretches far beyond a single fortnight in southwest London. What does the ascension of Alexandra Eala mean for the next half-decade of professional tennis? It signifies, primarily, a crucial democratization of talent. The traditional powerhouses of Eastern Europe and North America will always produce champions, but the emergence of a top-tier contender from Southeast Asia shifts the center of gravity. It proves to a million young girls hitting tennis balls against concrete walls in Manila or Jakarta or Bangkok that the pathway to center court is not a myth. It is a tangible, measurable reality. You can almost feel the foundations of the sport expanding, reaching into territories that were previously considered mere outposts. If we place Eala in the broader context of tennis history, she is standing at the exact precipice where promising talent either crystallizes into greatness or fractures under the pressure. We have seen prodigies burn blindingly bright for 2 seasons, only to fade into the middle ranks, haunted by the memory of their own early brilliance. Sustaining this level, living permanently in the top 20, reaching the second week of majors consistently, requires a physiological and emotional endurance that borders on the superhuman. The tour is a grind. It is hotel rooms, flight delays, minor injuries, and the relentless pressure of defending points. Eala's true test will not be how she handles this Wimbledon, but how she handles a Tuesday afternoon match in Wuhan next year, when the crowds are thin and the body aches. But watching her now, analyzing the mechanics of her game, and the quiet steel in her demeanor, one cannot help but feel optimistic. She plays with an old soul's understanding of the court. She respects the geometry of the game, preferring precision to mindless power. As the current vanguard, the Swiateks, the Sabalenkas, continue their reign, Eala represents the immediate challenge. She is the variable they cannot yet fully calculate. The tour needs rivalries. It needs stylistic contrasts. The heavy, looping left-handed topspin of Eala against the flat, concussive strikes of a Rybakina is the kind of matchup that can sustain the sport's narrative for years to come. The shock expressed by Jamie Baker over the ticket sales will eventually fade into a footnote. By next year, the demand for Eala's matches will simply be accepted as a structural reality of the tournament. The novelty will wear off, replaced by the heavy, enduring expectation of performance. That is the burden of becoming a seeded player. You are no longer the underdog. You are the target. Every player ranked below her will see that number 29 next to her name and believe they have a chance to claim a major scalp. She will have to learn to play as the favorite, a radically different psychological exercise than playing as a challenger. Yet, there is a distinct beauty in watching a player cross that threshold. It is the moment when potential translates into permanence. We are incredibly fortunate to be witnessing this transition in real time. The history of tennis is written in these exact moments of rupture and arrival, when she steps onto grass for her first-round match, surrounded by a crowd that has willed itself into grounds through sheer devotion. Listen closely to the sound of the ball coming off her racket. It will not just be the sound of a tennis match. It will be the sound of a completely new chapter being written, stroke by stroke, upon the oldest lawns in the world. And that, quite simply, is why we watch this beautiful, punishing game.